I will begin anyway with the introduction. So please allow me to wish you all a very good afternoon. And sorry that some of you would have to miss your lunch slot right now, but I think you may want to sacrifice lunch for this very exciting side event that we have planned for all of you. Now, as you know, the title of today's side event is Principles and Strategies for Integrated Landscape Fire Management Through Collaborative Governance. We have a long list of speakers, and we already have lost some minutes due to lunch break being held simultaneously at this time. So I will not go through the key points that are already in the concept note, which I presume you would have read, except to go through the objectives of what the side event is aiming for. And the first one, of course, is to share enabling policies, strategies, and best practices and lessons learned from India and Korea. Also to discuss policy development and guiding principles for integrated landscape fire management through collaborative governance and the landscape fire governance framework, and also to strengthen partnerships between existing fire initiatives, including the FAO UNAP Global Management Hub. This event seeks to facilitate the knowledge exchange and discussions on recent initiatives, strategies, and best practices in promoting integrated landscape fire management. Without further ado, could I please call on the first speaker for this afternoon, Mr. Tiago Oliveira, who is the President of the Agency for Integrated Rural Fire Management, AGIF, Portugal, to deliver the opening remarks. And he said he will keep them brief. Thank you, Tiago. Please go ahead.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. President, for the openings, and also I'd like to thank the participation of this event that is co-organized with India, Korea, Portugal, ITTO and FAO, and we also have the pleasure to have the participation of United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction here with us. So the main idea, I don't see if I can. Is it? Okay.
Where is it? Who's got that?
Who's got the pointer? Okay, thank you. Just to remind you that we live in a world on our earth. Hello, Mrs. Living. On earth, something is always burning. That's why it's so important to have all this forestry, agroforestry, agriculture, development, energy policies coming together to a common goal, to a common vision, in order to have all this relation to be assured that we have fewer losses and we are capable on providing goods and service for all living persons in the earth. And that's why it's so important to integrate the fire management and to have a systemic approach towards the fire problem, beyond the traditional way of command and control, but also bring together different policies in a broader scope on approaching fire through the lenses of the policies, on the framework and the institutional capabilities in order to make it happen. That's why we also participate in Vision, these events, to bring different perspectives in order to have a step forward, assuming that the fire will play a critical role in the future if you want to have in the future the provision of goods and service based on carbon sequestration, biodiversity, and water quality. That's why it's not enough to traditional approach fire as an exclusion policy or through the integrated fire management per se, but also with a landscape fire governance framework that has a broader range and a broader perspective. So that's the first words for the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiago. Thank you very much for those opening remarks. And, you know, I think you are absolutely right in that traditional practices just cannot work anymore in the view of current changing climate conditions and also evolving needs of society as well in how to deal with these extreme emergencies. Now, may I invite Mr. Jitendra Kumar, the Director General of Forests, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change from India, to set the scene for this afternoon's event. Please, Jitendra. Thank you.
Distinguished dignitaries on the dais and the participants, on behalf of the Government of India, I extend a warm welcome to all the distinguished delegates, members of the forum, members of various organizations of the Collaborative Partnership on Forest and other partners gathered here for the side event on the principle and strategy for landscape integrated fire management through collaborative governance. The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India is glad to organize this event along with the Agency for Integrated Fire Management Portugal, the Korea Forest Service and the International Timber Trade Organization. I also extend my thanks to the experts from the FAO, the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and the United Nations Environment Program for participating in this event. Forest fires or wildfires have been a leading cause of tree cover loss, accounting for more than a quarter of all tree cover loss over the last 2 decades. According to Global Forest Watch, in 2021 alone, more than 9 million hectares of tree cover was lost due to forest fire or wildfires. Climate change and land use changes are projected to make wildfires more frequent and intense, with a global increase of extreme fires up to 14% by 2030 and 30% by the end of 2050. Wildfires are also disproportionately affect the world's poor, impede progress toward the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and deepen social inequalities. The scientific evidence is unequivocal. Climate change coupled with land use changes is exacerbating the frequency and intensity of wildfires worldwide. While the incidence of wildfires has been the highest in boreal forests in the last 2 decades, wildfires in tropical forests have also been increasing at an alarming rate. During India's G20 presidency, the importance of managing forest fire and restoration of fire-affected areas were emphasized. The G20 countries highlighted that forest wildfires contribute to global carbon emission and air pollution, and that high-intensity wildfires affect the conservation and regeneration of ecosystem and can exacerbate climate change, land degradation, and biodiversity loss. There is a need for preventing and managing wildfires and restoring wildfire-impacted land. We need to scale up efforts to enhance collaboration and action at local, regional, and the international level on the prevention of wildfires and reduction of impact of wildfires, and also the restoration of wildfire-impacted land. In addition, sustainable forestry practices with involvement of the local community and indigenous knowledge and techniques can be an important strategy for better conservation of natural resources together with reduced impacts from wildfires. The G20 Environment and Climate Sustainability Working Group analyzed and compiled best practices from several countries on the strategies that covered management of wildfires and restoration of fire-affected areas across multitude of forest landscapes globally. These best practices cover a wide range of solutions such as bioengineering interventions, green fire breaks, post-fire risk assessment, and a host of restoration measures. I emphasize upon the critical importance of allocating resources towards planning and preparedness against wildfire. The impact of fire on our ecosystem, communities, and economics is enormous. To safeguard our forest and mitigate the escalating risk, we must prioritize proactive measures, investing in early warning system, robust fire management strategies, and community engagement program is important. In this background, India considers the management of wildfire as a critical component of sustainable forest management in view of increasing frequency and severity of wildfires. Managing and controlling forest fire is a strategic imperative in our global battle against climate change and environmental degradation. This urgent call to action demands our unwavering commitment, dedication, and collaborative efforts. We look forward to a series of engagement and fruitful discussion and experiences. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jitendra Kumar. for, excuse me, for your very inspiring elements that you have highlighted. And all the elements will be complemented by the panel of distinguished speakers that we have joining us today. Can I now call on to the next speaker, Mr. Raghu Prasad, to please, Mr. Raghu is the Inspector General of Forests, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change from India, to speak on strategies for forest fire and wildfire control and management to safeguard India's ecosystem. So who's got that?
Thank you, Executive Director of ITTO for that. And we are really glad to partner this side event with Portugal, with Korea, and with ITTO for this side event. Just to give a brief on, in fact, we all know, I think, right from morning on the importance of why wildfires and forest fires is important in terms of sustainable forest management. So I'm not going to the details of that. Just to give a glance of how India has been managing forest fires over decades. In fact, we have a range of forest types across the country, right from evergreens to deciduous forest, to the alpines, to temperate. In fact, the majority of the fires happened in the deciduous and in the pine forests in India, basically in the midlands and in the northern regions. And the fire season ranges from around November till June each year, but it peaks from February to around May. It peaks up. In fact, we have been over last 2 decades been fine-tuning the most high priority fire zone areas, because we have almost 2 decades of data, very granular data, as to which are those areas which are highly prone to forest fires based on the repeated incidences and on the ecosystem. So the entire country has been mapped in terms of the fire-prone priority hotspots. What we do in India is to actually get access to the real-time data. So once a fire event occurs somewhere, once it's captured by satellites, probably within a minute or 2, we are able to pass on that information to the field staff. Once we get this, once the satellite gives us the data, it's actually passed on to the Forest Survey of India. We have an institute in Dehradun, which has a data processing center. They churn it out, and it's disseminated to almost around 200,000 users across the country, whether it is field staff, local forest officers, and practitioners. This data is actually disseminated. It's also put on the web portal. It's a public domain, which gives a very accurate geolocations and the approximate area in which that fire incidence is occurring. So and it also goes through what you call a real-time SMS alert, an email alert. So multiple alerts are sent directly to the field staff. The Forest Survey of India has been, over the last 2 decades, gaining its expertise on the alert generation, because the response to forest in terms of control and management, it all starts with how quick we are able to actually detect a forest fire, because which is happening in very remote areas. In fact, the Forest Survey of India has not only been actually doing the forest fire mapping alerts, they're also now developed their expertise on forest inventory and on forest cover mapping. So we do a forest cover every 2 years and bring the India State of Forest report every 2 years. In terms of the forest fire dissemination of data, as I earlier said, we send those alerts on a daily basis. Approximately every day we send 6 times the alerts are getting generated, and we also try to do a weekly forecast based on a lot of parameters in terms of temperature, the soil temperature, and a lot of parameters. We also send a weekly forecast, and then once a fire event occurs, it is actually going as a near real-time fire alerts to the staff. This is some of the data which on an annual basis, from 2021 we had incidences of almost around 340,000 fire alerts, and currently we have around 165,000 fire alerts. But the season is still on; it may pop up anytime higher. This is just a gradual progression of how the fire transforms in the country, right from, as you can see, from February till around April to May. That is a period in which the fire virtually peaks up across the central Indian landscape. As I was mentioning earlier, this is on the public domain. It's called a One Agni portal. It gives a very granular data of the fire incidences. It also gives a forecast for 1 week. It also gives an actual real-time basis of where the fires are actually happening. Once the alerts are disseminated, then the entire the forest department machinery, along with other line departments, they also take up control measures. A lot of funding programs also happens at the state levels, at the provincial levels, and also at the national levels on a range of issues, for including on firefighting equipments, on creating fire lines, on infrastructure. And we also provide incentives to local communities to safeguard fire and prevent fire on an annual basis. And we also use, rarely we also use choppers, because over the last 2 decades we have not had large ground fires happening in the country, but because of the response time, we are able to actually keep that to the ground fire levels. We do closely monitor, once the fire alerts are disseminated, we do closely monitor the time taken for each of those pixels to be doused off. So that's one big monitoring exercise which we do right at the beat level to the district levels and the state level. So we have a good command control system in which we are able to actually track at a pixelated level in terms of the forest fire management and control it. So almost around 60 to 70% of the forest fire, we are able to bring it down in the first 24 hours before it is actually spread beyond controls. Community participation is extremely important. In fact, we have been, because they play a major role. In fact, most of the fires are all anthropogenic fires. It's all man-made fires. So we also work with communities, build up their livelihoods, and to see that the practices which are followed is actually fire-friendly. In fact, some of those, these are the pine needles which are getting collected, are actually converted into handicrafts. So that they get a livelihoods, they get additional incomes out of this. Some of the tribal communities, they collect mahua flowers. It's a flower which actually falls. They used to set fire. So small interventions like providing them nets actually safeguards those ecosystems. We are also working on restoring the fire-impacted areas. It's extremely difficult because some of those areas which are actually repeated forest fires actually occur. We tend to lose biodiversity there. So long-term commitments in terms of restoration of those areas, and to see that invasive alien species which actually invade those areas after the repeated fire, it's actually a long-term commitment to actually take it out of that. This is one case study. I think we'll leave the slides to the team to actually circulate. So thank you all for that.
Thank you very much for that, Raghu. Very interesting presentation. And as we can see, it is quite a long process. It's a long journey, not just to actually prevent and also mitigate, minimize. There is then, of course, the restoration work that comes afterwards. So it does require quite a lot of collaboration. And again, as I said earlier, a number of innovative thinking and innovative skills need to be coming into this. And congratulations to India. At least, from what you have put and showed us on the screen, you have thought about it from practically every angle that can impact upon an area that is burnt by forest fires. Thank you. Next, can I invite Ms. Gina Kim, who is the Director of International Cooperation Division, Korea Forest Service, to share with us her insights on forest fire control policies in the Republic of Korea. Please, Gina.
Give me the
Pointer, please, yes. There you go.
Good afternoon, and show me my presentation. presentation on the screen. Okay, my name is Jina Kim, and it is my pleasure to share the forest fire control policies in the Republic of Korea. And I'd like to thank all the co-organization, India and Protocol and other organizations to convening this meaningful event. Actually, Korea has a big fire in 2022. And we put a lot of effort to manage the forest fire and deal with the forest fire affected forest, such as reforestation.
Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, we are having some technical difficulties. Please bear with us, they're trying to fix it. Sorry about this, Gina, it's ridiculous.
Okay.
On the big screen.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Okay, then. This is a brief overview of what I would like to explain in my presentation today. First, I'd like to start with some general information on the Republic of Korea. Korea has a land area about 10 million hectares and 63% which are forest. The population is about 51.4 million and the population density is relatively high. Due to Korea's high population density and the forest cover, housing, cultural assets, and infrastructure are located around mountains, so swift forest fire response is paramount in this context. As depicted in the chart, the leadership of the Korea Forest Service is comprised of the minister and deputy minister overseeing 6 bureaus. Among the 6 bureaus, the Forest Disaster Management Bureau was established at the end of 2022 to respond more intensively to climate-related forest disasters such as forest fire, landslide, and forest pest outbreaks. The KF has several affiliated agencies, each with specific roles and responsibility. Due to the time constraint, I will only briefly introduce the Forest Aviation Headquarters today. The mission of the Forest Aviation Headquarters is protect the public and private forest from forest fires. They operate 48 helicopters, which are crucial in combating forest fire in Korea. Next, let's take a look at the current state of forest fire in Korea. Forest fires in Korea are rapidly growing in frequency and size. As of 2022, Korea experienced 756 forest fires, a 41% increase compared to the previous decade, with 7 times the damage. Forest fire used to confined to spring, mainly from March to early May. However, climate change has made them a year-round threat, except in the summer, where we witness frequency rains. Korea is susceptible to forest fires due to its topography and climate. The dry weather causes fire risk during spring. According to the statistic from the KFS, 58% of annual forest fires are concentrated in spring. Korea's topography, with high mountains in the east and lowland in the west, creates strong winds in spring, increasing risks for forest fires. The Korean red pine, a dominant species, is highly flammable due to volatile substance called topine. The KFS establishes a comprehensive nationwide plan for forest fires every year, taking into account the temperature and precipitation prospects for that year. In addition, each municipality establishes and operates a forest fire response plan tailored to the features of the local area based on the comprehensive measures taken by the KFS. The main contents of the comprehensive measures are forest fire prevention, preparation system for forest fire suppression, swift extinguishing of forest fires, and forest restoration activities. One of the biggest causes of forest fire in Korea is due to burning agriculture by products in rural area. In Korea, there are farmlands near forest, so if the winds blow when agriculture byproducts are being burnt, there is a high risk of the fire spreading into forest fire. In order to eradicate the act of burning agricultural byproducts in forest adjacent area, the KFS is implementing a policy to collect and crush agriculture byproduct in cooperation with Agriculture Ministry. As I mentioned earlier, there are residential area and cultural assets located in or around the forest. To protect this facility from the forest fire, we are working to remove substances that will fuel forest fires within 20 to 25 meters from the facilities. Furthermore, subsidies are provided to install forest fire extinguishing facilities, especially for cultural assets. Next, I will move on to the Korea's forest fire readiness, the National Institute of Forest Science, or NIFOS, a research institute under the Korea Forest Service, has developed a data-driven forest fire risk prediction system to provide early warning for the public and to facilitate the rapid response. The forest fire risk prediction system displays levels of forest fire risk into 4 grades on the map. Blue is the safest from forest fires, yellow is somewhat at risk, orange is high, and red is extremely high. Anyone can access the system and get the information about the projected forest fire risk level and the locations. The Korean government has sent alert and warning message to residents in areas at high risk of forest fires to discourage causes such as burning. In addition, forest fire monitoring drones and surveillance cameras are operated to detect forest fires. And when a forest fire ranger detects a forest fire, they can report the condition of the fire, such as the location, photos, and video information to the Korea Forest Disaster Control Center, FDCC, in real time. The figure on the left is the FDCC, and when a forest fire occurs, the KFS serves as a headquarters and discusses the countermeasures and strategy with related ministries. The figure on the right show on the site information, such as the main facilities and weather conditions in the area where a forest fire has occurred that can be identified in FDCC when reporting the forest fire through the app. On site of a forest fire, a coordinated effort among various institutes comes into play. The KFS takes charge of forest fire suppression, while the National Fire Agency focuses on protecting houses and cultural assets from the flames. The KFS uses firefighting vehicles in area where it is feasible. However, due to the limited availability of forest road, the helicopter play a pivotal role in our firefighting efforts. During the nighttime, firefighters on the ground directly extinguish fires, as you can see in the picture. This slide indicates the forest fire spread prediction system. This system is developed by NIFOS as well. It generates fire spread prediction maps based on the analysis of weather and topography, aiding the strategic deployment of firefighting resources, including helicopter. In response to forest fire, the KFS operates various resources. Human resources include forest ranger, the special suppression team, and rappel team are dispatched on site for forest fire response. We have also various equipment such as backpack pumps, command vehicle, and firefighting vehicles, but among them, I will focus more on forest fire extinguishing helicopters. Currently, we have a fleet of 48 forest fire helicopters at our disposal, and the Forest Aviation Headquarters manages them. Additionally, local government operates 76 helicopters, bringing the total to 124. This is my last slide. In Korea, after the forest fire period in spring from March to May, the torrential rain period will arrive from January to August. To prevent landslide, emergency logging of forest fire damaged trees and slope stabilizations are carrying out. In the long run, a consultative board, including local residents and experts, will be formed to establish a forest restoration plan. According to this plan, forest restoration projects are implemented. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Gina. Very interesting presentation indeed. And congratulations as well to the Republic of Korea for the advancement that they have made in terms of the system that they have been using. And you're very fortunate, Gina, that the Republic of Korea is quite rich in their own resources. There are the majority of countries around the world are not in a position to afford the kind of mechanics and mechanisms and equipment that you already have. But still, it is something to look upon as a very good model moving forward and impressive in terms of the spread prediction and also the fire suppression measures that you use. Right, thank you very much. Next, we return to Mr. Tiago Oliveira, who is the president of the Agency for Integrated Rural Fire Management, AGIF, from Portugal, to talk to us about landscape fire governance framework, outcome of the 8th International Wildland Fire Conference. Please, Tiago, thank you.
Okay, thank you again. Well, let me introduce from our experience. That's what I came here to speak about. It's that after the 2017 fire season where more than 120 persons lost their lives in Portuguese fire and more than 88% of the country was burned, well, we were invited to think of the system, and the integrated fire management system was put in place. But what we realized that was not sufficient to tackle the fire problem, because there was a lot of structural reforms that need to be in place regarding the fire. Properties, boundaries, fiscal incentives, agriculture incentives, several issues. So we understand that what is needed was to bring the causes instead of just tackling the consequences. And from the two previous presentations from India and Korea, what we saw, and very well done, was the integrated fire management system that was tackling the agriculture burnings, the defensible spaces, urban firefighters, forest firefighters, and a lot of early warning systems to be ready and to be ready to fight the fires. And what we understood and what we bring here to you is that the need to have a whole government approach that we deliver later on to fire hub initiatives in order to have this landscape fire governance framework in place, to have the problem under control, and also to bring the resources that produce what we need in the future. So the first challenge we have is we need to recognize the governments are under pressure as fire losses unfolds with global warming and wild and urban interface expose more people. So governments will be exposed to this experience. Our growing and real and perceived value of forest and biodiversity will challenge the existing systems to deliver beyond protecting people. And this ambivalence is key also. Simple solutions won't work because complexity and uncertainty will reign and steps in. And also, we do know that knowledge to tackle fire, this wicked problem, is available in academia and in experts, but do not embed it at the local and national institutions as it should, undermining effective integration of policies, budgets, priorities, and procedures. Multitude of disciplines, stakeholders, and conflicting their asymmetric power will play on, and that will shift the agendas and the political focus. So it's also important to recognize that there is a lack of societal wildfire literacy and institutional eagerness to manage this complexity, and the politicians will be drove for unintended consequences of technical fixes, amplifying the problem on the long run. So we call it this fire paradox, and we need to recognize this problem to step in and move forward. So we try to blend the risk governance approach that brings how risk information is collected, analyzed, communicated, and how the risk management decisions are made with integrated fire management, volunteer fire guidelines of FAO, and move forward from a traditional simple risk problem towards a multi-agency polycentric governance system, which we think it's the best approach to tackle the problem. If we want to harness CO2 in trees, promote biodiversity, it's that we believe it's not possible with this single agency trying to tackle the problem, because there are other policies that are driving the problem to a different consequence that need to be in place. So the key priority, and I think United Nations risk reduction strategy with Sendai framework claims about this, is strengthening institutional capabilities to be fire smart, balanced budgets, prevention and suppression. In 2017, Portugal spent 146 million euros per year on fire. 20% was on prevention. Now we are spending 500 million euros and 61% is on prevention. So we made a twist. It is not enough, we do know, and we need to proceed to keep moving forward. But we need also to present the results publicly in order to have the public support to move forward. Well, so the framework aims to help countries and regions, mostly policymakers and institutional leaderships, to have a transformation of their systems towards risk governance that improves the cooperation to manage the risk, coping with uncertain and adapting working process from prevention, planning, pre-suppression, suppression and recovery, going beyond traditional prevention and suppression dichotomy. So, and the key message that I want to deliver is that we need to solve the problem going to the root causes of it. So we need to value rural areas, promote active management, and promote behavior change in order to be risk management fire-wise efficient. So if you want to reduce bad fire, we need to put good fire in. You need to put the herbivories, we need to put agro-silvopastoralist approach, we need to reduce carbon emissions in order to, and also to strengthen governance model, and training and qualifications need to be all a way forward. So what we would like to that happen in the future is that the international community would support and recognize the role of integrated fire management and strengthen its governance first, to set ambition to protect people and also the environment with a balanced budget covering prevention and suppression, making sure that institutions cooperate and make good use of science and that results are monitoring. Promoting widespread of use of this framework would promote that the globally we were cooperating and move forward faster and close to what we needed. So landscape fire governance is a way forward and help to monitorize the key performance indicators. Quoting Steve Pine, the fire is the synthesis of the context. If you want to control fire, we need to change the context. So I leave all this in short, this message. You can see the details of this fire landscape governance framework in detail, and also we have presented and we are working closely with FAO with a checklist to help the countries to assess the status and move beyond, helping to break the silos and put international cooperation in the future. That is, we also believe is paramount importance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tiago. Again, what can I add to that? Tiago has given us food for thought on how a global integrated fire management framework could work globally. But again, political will and sourcing, funding resources would be two key elements, I think, in making that happen. And that's also the education process of bringing society up to speed as to what can be good fires and what can be bad fires. I remember as a child growing up in the tropics in Malaysia, a lot of it is man-made. Also in Europe, a lot of forest fires are human-induced. Unintentional, but it has devastating consequences. But I'm so happy to hear that at least internationally, many countries are moving forward in trying to rectify all the shortcomings within their own societies. Huh? Right, now I think we should move on to Dr. Wu Jimin, excuse me, who is the director of the Forestry Division from the FAO in Rome, and he will introduce to us the work that FAO is doing on the Global Fire Management Hub. Please, Jimin. Thank you.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, it's my great pleasure to be part of this panel, and especially talking about the integrated fire management. Actually, we know that fire has been used by humans for millennia, right? Especially by local people and indigenous people, right, for their daily lives and for clearing land for agriculture, right? And also, fires are being used in some countries to actually maintain healthy ecosystems. For example, this prescribed burning, right, is a best practice. But however, uncontrolled fires can cause catastrophic damages. right? Every year, approximately 340 to 370 million hectares were burned by fire, of which 70 million hectares are forests. So climate change and also land use change are expected to make wildfires more frequent and intense, posing greater threat and risk to human and planet health. So how we respond to the wildfire challenge is of crucial importance. Actually, traditionally, we actually focus on reactive response, right? Putting the fire out if we actually see the fire. But now FAO and together with countries and partners, we are working to promote a transformative shift from reactive response to proactive measures. It means that we need to shift the focus to prevention and preparedness, right? Especially through, say, early pre-warning or early warning system. And also through this, what we call the integrated fire management, which involves action long before and long after the fires, and also including actions while it is burning. And FAO has been promoting integrated fire management through fire elements that we call the 5 Rs: review and analysis, risk reduction, readiness, response, and recovery. So it's from the very beginning to actually the post-fire recovery. FAO has promoted an integrated approach to, say, fire management since 1953, including through the 80 fire management projects in over 50 countries. We also provide global technical support, including through the FAO voluntary fire guidelines. And to actually, given the increased frequency and intensity of extreme wildfires, integrated fire management needs to be promoted and to be put in place by primarily governments, right? The governments are in the driver's seat, so international organizations like FAO are here ready to serve the government, to provide technical, say, support and expertise. So to achieve this, FAO and UNEP officially launched the Global Fire Management Hub during the 8th International Wildland Fire Conference in Portugal in 2023. The Fire Hub is actually a collective initiative of key global and regional partners and organization and entities, actually, which offers one-stop shop for data, guidelines, and best practices, etc., e-learnings, etc. And actually, the fire hubs, actually, we are working on 3, say, dimensions as well, including those 3, in addition to those 3, elements. So, which is enhanced knowledge sharing, strengthening capacity building, support wildfire resilient communities, and improve fire risk assessment and early warning. Of course, offer policy support. Then the Fire Hub is managed by a compact secretariat hosted by the FAO, and it links with projects on the ground, such as the Assuring the Future of Forests with Integrated Risk Management, a firm mechanism funded by the Korean Forest Service, and now being piloted in Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam. And the firm project works to establish an internationally applicable mechanism for reducing damage and loss by large-scale forest disturbances, starting with wildfires. So thanks to the initial support from the German Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agriculture, FAO has actually organized a series of technical workshops with partners since last November. And this includes integrating the Global Fire Monitoring Center and the regional networks and centers into this Global Fire Hub. So the Fire Hub will be presented at the 24th session of COFO in July. And also I would like to take this opportunity to actually express our sincere gratitude to our donors and they are actually the German Ministry of Food and Agriculture, and the Korean Forest Service, the Canadian Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, the French Ministry of Agriculture, the Portugal Agency for Integrated Rural Fire Management. So FAO is looking forward to enhancing collaboration with member states and partners on integrated fire management. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Jimin, on introducing the Global Fire Management Hub to all of us. As members of the CPF, many of us are also interested in collaborating with the FAO in making this hub a success. Now, may I go over to Mr. Sebastian Penzini, the Deputy Chief from the Regional Office for Europe and Central Asia, UNDRR, to speak to us on evolving wildfire risk in Europe and Central Asia, shifting from suppression to prevention. Please.
Thank you very much. Everything is already said with that. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, the co-organizers, for the opportunity given to UNDRR to share perspectives, and in this specific case from Europe and Central Asia. Maybe just next slide. I have only one, because the chance I have being the last speaker is just to maybe summarize everything which has been said very correctly so far with good figures and in a way the shifts we have to do all together for adapting to what is going on. So in a nutshell, what can we say, and what has been said already, is that the nature of wildfire risk is evolving. It is evolving quickly, and it is evolving significantly. Why? Of course, and we said that also because of climate change, the conditions are drier, are warmer, are windier. The UN Secretary General called it already the boiling era. In Europe, we are already counting tropical nights, torrid nights. So we are no longer in the same context. We have also to think about the fact that wildfire risk is not operating anymore in isolation. It's going in synergy with heat waves, with drought, which are exacerbating the conditions and making the work of prevention and suppression even harder. What are the other reasons that have been also already raised by my predecessors? Of course, we have issues with strategic planning, especially about management, daily management of rural areas and agriculture, which actually induce rural exodus. We have more fuel and we have less people to manage it on a daily basis. At the same time, what do we observe is a growing wide urban interface with secondary houses, with urban expansion, and with actually more people exposed to the risk. So even if the risk would remain the same, more people is exposed to it. We have also new behaviors, outdoor activities, people with a less good perception of risk or less informed to some extent. So this is more or less the context. What is observed in Europe is, of course, an increase of frequency and intensity of wildfires. It is more northern areas being exposed. We have all in mind the fires in Sweden, which were so unexpected at that moment, even by the authorities. We have also a fire season which is dramatically extended, with dramatic fires in January and in February in Europe. The Mediterranean basin is already called a climate change hotspot, being exposed and impacted all months of the year. So we have, with that, very good data already, and unfortunately, 900,000 hectares burned in Europe in 2022. It is the size of the island of Corsica, and we have same thing, the size of Luxembourg, burned in 2023. What is important as we are talking about evolving nature of wildfires is that the most destructive wildfires are not the most numerous ones, but they have disproportionate impact on economic and human assets. I would just repeat what my predecessor said about the lives lost in Portugal, the ones also in Greece. It is something which is every day in our mind when we are working on wildfire risk. So what these elements actually trigger, it's wildfires beyond control. and wildfires which induce more impact, human and economic losses. I just talked about it. Also, there is a growing concern in Europe and Central Asia about the respiratory and cardiovascular issues due to smoke and air pollution, as well as, of course, the loss of biodiversity and even transboundary impact and internal displacement. So it is definitely a priority number one, which is now addressed by member states in Europe and Central Asia. One element which has been repeated already by all my predecessors is what we can do and what we have to do is to change our approaches. The traditional approaches are no longer effective with this evolving nature of wildfire. And what we have to further do is to shift from fire suppression to fire prevention. Of course, the cycle might be larger, and my predecessor explained it, but at least if we have to summarize it, it is more funds, more efforts being made on prevention, because fire suppression capacities, even aerials, will not be sufficient in the future to keep the fires under control. And this is not me saying that, it is the firefighters. So what we can do for that, already some very good practices and some very good initiatives have been shared by my colleagues. I would maybe just repeat some of it. Of course, leverage technology for better prediction and monitoring, meaning further and better using the new technologies, satellite images. There are in Europe already very good and very sophisticated tools such as Copernicus, EFIS, and the tools being put in place by the European Commission and which can be more largely used in geographic areas. We are also talking about, of course, and we were talking about that at the beginning, reinvesting the rural areas, managing fuels, and creating incentives for avoiding rural exodus, which actually create more fuel and more fuel not manageable. We have, for that, to adopt proactive land management, urban planning, and nature-based solutions to adapt and to mitigate. We are talking here about climate change and wildfire risk together. It's all has to be integrated. And all is about, here we are talking the last point, about governance. We have, of course, to integrate science, risk assessment, and governance together. We have to think about what has been done already by a number of countries, national adaptation plan, national disaster risk reduction strategies, which put together the different ministries, the different entities, the different actors for actually finding the solutions, putting the budgets in front of it, and implementing action for prevention. I was completely delighted to hear that this shift has been made to the scale of 20 to 60% in Portugal. I think it is a very meaningful example. We have also some other mechanisms that you may, after this session, also check, which are, for example, the European Union Civil Protection Mechanism, which put together the capabilities, the capacities, and the expertise of the European Union countries, plus a number of others. You have also some local level efforts which are extremely impactful when it comes to the front line. I will just mention here the Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative, which helps cities to get good practices from other cities, which get cities with tools, provide cities with tools for assessing the risk, the wildfire risk, and for also putting efforts together by peer exchange and even trainings. We have also, in terms of governance, some extremely good initiatives being replicated in Europe. For example, the nomination of chief resilience officers, of ITTO chief officers, and different positions, strategic positions at different national and local level to address this risk. We have also a number of programs and projects. FAO is an important one. UNEP is also working on other projects together with a number of member states. And obviously, it is very important to have these different projects working in synergy. UNDRR has gathered ministers from 30 countries, if my memory is good, in 2022 about wildfire risk. And the idea was exactly the same. Let's share capacities, let's share expertise for being better together facing a common risk. So that's, in a nutshell, what I wanted to share with you as perspectives from Europe. I will just, as a last word, say that the most important is, of course, as always, to leave no one behind. And UNDRR just released a very short and very interesting publication about inclusive governance for managing wildfire risk, heat waves, and drought at the city level. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. Again, a very interesting talk. And I think from what you have said, including all the other elements that our predecessors have said, forest fire these days is a universal problem. It used to be one of those dangers that used to hit only either tropical countries or countries that are in the desert regions because of the extreme heat and due to human callousness. But now, as Sebastian also has shared with all of you, it is happening in the most unexpected parts in Europe. And this has been prevalent for the last, say, decade and a half. So thank you again to all the speakers for everything that you have mentioned. Now, I think we have seen quite clearly what we can do as a society together. There are different tools and elements that we need to take into consideration, change the way in which we think and change the way in which we do things. And I think also what Sebastian said at the end was very important, that projects need to work in synergy. So there are FAO projects, there are UNEP projects. ITTO has also executed quite a number of fire-related projects in the last 3 decades. We also have guidelines. And the 2 most recent fire control projects were executed in Peru and Indonesia with generous financial support from the government of Japan. And a lot of it has very common elements that all speakers have touched upon. In other words, predicting, minimizing again, the restoration at the end should be the last resort, actually, the prevention. Prevention would be the first thing. The real-time alerts, education of the communities that are involved, and both projects that ITTO executed in Indonesia and Peru had all these elements incorporated into them. So I think the society at large has a lot to learn from a culmination of all the experiences that our distinguished speakers have shared today. Of course, the framework is extremely important. The governance issue is one that is key. On top of everything else, we also need the political will and financial resources in order to make it happen. You've heard from all the speakers. So I think we have time maybe for a couple of questions before I will then allow Ms. Gina Kim to conclude the session, or just finish in the last 2 minutes if you wish, with the closing remarks. But let's take the questions first. I mean, we just about made it. So we're doing all right. So 2 questions from the audience, if you wish. Anyone? Okay, sorry. There's a gentleman just behind you, John, and then John, and the gentleman over there. Please, no, you first, please. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, moderator. Let's start from your last point that you mentioned, that the forest fire is a universal problem. Yes, that's true, especially in region West Asia. There's arid and semi-arid. In Iran, we are suffering from that one. That's an unfortunate that we have such a kind of universal problem. I have 2 questions. The first question is about the public awareness. We heard a lot of the best practices from India, Portuguese, and then Republic of Korea. I appreciate that brief us regarding the public awareness that they've done at the level of the national level. The second question is about the causes. Is there any percentage regarding the main elements of the causes of the fire? For example, it's 10% to the human-induced problem, or 15%, 50% is because of the climate change. Is there such a kind of analysis at the national level or not? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the 2 questions. Are they directed to any particular speaker, or shall I open it up to the panel and ask who wishes to answer either or both of the questions? If nobody wants to do that, I can have a stab at it. But I think you can, Sebastian. You might have
No,
the stats.
Maybe I think we have very greater experts in the room, but from some figures we have, I think that the human-induced fire are sometimes up to 90% of the total. But I think we have greater experts here.
Thank you, Sebastian. And on the public awareness issue, does anybody want to say anything on the public awareness? Or shall I touch on this one? If you wish to, please.
Maybe I can just share an anecdote about the current status, even in very advanced countries, about public awareness and risk perception. I was listening just 1 year ago the hearings of the presidents of the Firefighter Federation, so professional and expert, to the parliamentarians. He was explaining actually about the problem with risk communication, education, and awareness. What he said is the following to the parliamentarians. When there is a flood, you are asked to evacuate. Everybody stays at home. When there is a fire, everybody is asked to stay at home. They all evacuate. That was 1 year ago in a very advanced country dealing with disaster risk reduction. So it gives us, I believe, a sense of the gap that we have to fill for having educated communities and population about the risk and the evolving nature of risk as well. Because same thing, the fire of yesterday is not the same as of today.
Thank you, Sebastian. Now can we move to the second question? Dr. Perota, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments and maybe a very brief question at the end. It was really gratifying to see in the two case studies of India and Korea this alliance and collaboration between the scientific community, the scientific organizations, and those who are charged with managing these huge challenges. In the case of India, it was the Forest Survey of India in a very critical position, and NIFOS playing a very key role in Korea in this effort. And I think this is to be commended and replicated everywhere. Secondly, it was very, very good to hear a colleague from India speak about the search for solutions, for alternatives to the burning practices that people engage in as a matter of economic necessity. So these alternatives are really key to managing the whole problem. And in the case of Korea, it was really interesting to hear what you had to say about basically citizen science and the citizens being involved in detection and reporting of fire incidents. I think that must add a lot of value to the other efforts, and maybe these are the kinds of things that could also be implemented in India, where I think everybody has a cell phone and is happy to use it. So congratulations to actually all the panelists. It's a superb session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Some very, very kind words for the speakers and all the panelists. Thank you. Thank you very much. Gentleman over there. Please introduce yourself as well when you speak. Forgot to mention that earlier. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a very well organized side event. This is Ümit Turhan from State of Forestry Agency from Turkey. Let me begin with this special thanks for the valuable presenters, speakers for their insightful, interesting presentation and remarks. My question to Ms. Jina Kim, Director of International Cooperation in Korea. As we all aware of the in the scope of integrated forest fire management, the most crucial step of the risk reduction. In this scope, in your country, for the prevention activities, fire defensible activities, spaces, forest fire resistant trees in pine forests and around towns create a fire break zone. I just stuck on and wonder about these fire-resistant trees in pine forest. You mentioned about to plant broadleaf species in deciduous areas or any specific tree species like cupressus to make resistant for the forest area. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you for your question. Actually, in Korea has the broad area of Korean pine because Korean people really love and like Korean pine. For example, our national anthem include the Korean pine and mention the Korean pine, but to prevent and forest fire, we replant the forest-resistant tree species such as broad-leaved trees. But actually, the reforestation and restoration in rural area, we have a consultation with the residents in a rural area, and some people want to plant the pine because they make expensive mushroom and it helps to their revenue. So it is our headache about that between the residents' hopes and the fire management. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gina. I think if there are no burning, okay, one last one. Maureen, please, from Canada. Thank you. Last one.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. It was good to hear all the increasing integrated nature of everything from preparedness, to actual firefighting. And there was a couple of references to health, and that's my question. Last year in Canada, we lost 18.5 million hectares to forest fire. It's a record. It's not a record where we were aiming to have, obviously, but the smoke was a huge issue, and it came down as far as Washington, New York, and these are forest fires that were burning in the northern parts of Canada. We had probably the highest number of public alerts in terms of respiratory, where people had to stay home, anybody who had respiratory or cardiovascular issues. I'm wondering, as countries and institutions develop their new policy frameworks, is health one of the pillars that are being incorporated, or is that coming later? But I see health partners as being critical to any forward-looking policies. Thank you.
I cannot respond, of course, on the behalf of the governments, but I can just share what we have witnessed in our region is at least and already a growing concern about it, and a growing wish to actually further and better include this very specific public health aspect in everything linked actually to wildfire risk. We have also we have seen already some national strategies for disaster risk reduction integrating directly the question of public health and air pollution linked to wildfire in their document. The thing is, it's of course something which happens after the fire occurs, so it's something difficult, and it's again really about prevention. There are maybe some examples we can share with you, but definitely even in UN reports, this question, and EU reports, this question is definitely growing up in the agenda.
Thanks for the issue about health. Of course, it's a very important issue regarding the public opinion in order to pressure the governments to have the right things being done. Of course, from our perspective, it helps that government is aware of this problem, and is one of the pillars that accounts for the decision making at the political level. And it is also important to recognize that if you don't want to have severe weeks of smoke during the summer, you need to have some smoke during the winter. So you need to promote the use of prescribed burning during the winter time in order to reduce the fuel load to avoid severe fire events. Otherwise, you are doomed to failure. Also, you are doomed to failure if you only bet in awareness campaigns that reduce the probability of an event. If you don't treat the fuel load ahead of the fire with prescribed burning, with intensive grazing, you are doomed to failure. And I think we need to deliver this message. You need to value forest resources, to put money in the pocket of the forest owners for them to reinvest in forest management. There is no way out. Otherwise, it will be very expensive.
Thank you very much for that, Tiago, and also to Sebastian for answering that question. It's a tough one, yes, and you're absolutely right, Maureen. The health consequence is huge. Again, I don't want to encroach on anybody's time because we have run slightly over time. And as I mentioned earlier, the whole point on this is to increase international collaboration, and we need to work all the more in synergy with each other. And we want to do this together also. We would like to help our member countries in moving forward. And it's actually very nice to hear, know, and see that many countries are taking equivalent steps in marching forward. And now for the countries that never used to experience forest fires many, many years ago, they're learning how to deal with it. Luckily, because there are examples out there from which they can learn. Sure, there's a lot more where science is concerned and where reinvesting is concerned is important and absolutely necessary. And hey, that's all part of sustainable forest management. That's the air we breathe, right? So please watch the space, and within the collaborative partnership on forests as well, we are intent amongst the partners who are capable and who are interested in working together. It was ITTO's suggestion to have a CPF joint initiative on forest fire management. And so we are hoping that our partners within the CPF will also readily jump on board so that we can actually achieve more progress in the near future. And again, I thank all the speakers today. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful, wonderful experience for the audience. And I thank you for being a great audience as well. Thank you so much.